Are we having guests for the rest of the work session or online? There's,
We do
okay.
not have anybody signed up for public.
No, why, did you want some guests?
No, I just didn't know everybody.
Oh, maybe Ralph needs to introduce one of our staff
Okay.
members. There you go. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and okay, all right. I will welcome back. We're going to call to order. We returned from our executive session and we are back in our North Bend City Council regular session agenda for Tuesday, November 23rd. We're reconvening here at 6:18 in the room. Let's see here. And we're going to move down the agenda. We took care of both of our executive sessions after rearranging that a bit. The next item of business then is we have several discussions tonight. And we have council committees. But Mr. City Administrator, did I hear you say that the Public Works Director has some introductions to make before we begin?
Yes, Ralph, if you would like to bring up your guest, our staff member, and explain why he's attending council members, because he's so excited about learning more about the civic process.
You may or may not know,
Hey,
but
Mike.
Greg Mooney, our wastewater superintendent, retired as of November 5th. So Mike has been running the plant for, you're 30 years, 31 years.
3 and 3 months.
Oh.
So we have appointed Mike as our, at this point, we plan on continuing as superintendent, but there's interim superintendent until we make that final decision. We'll give him a trial run. He's only been there 33 years. Anyways, yeah, Mike wanted to, not necessarily be introduced, but he wanted to get used to what happens
Sure.
up here in the big leagues, so.
Wonderful. Thank you and welcome.
Mike,
Okay, so we have several discussions for item 3 tonight. We're going to begin with council committees. And we are coming up on the kind of fiscal year end of the committees closing. And we need to revisit the committees that we have, the committees that we want to keep, what the purpose of the committees are. So, Mr. City Administrator, I know that we have some positions expiring as well, and that tomorrow evening, one of the action items that we can do is to authorize the posting of those. So there's a very specific time frame and criteria of when that they're posted and open and filled. So did you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I'll gladly say that council committees are your committees. They're committees that you all designate, and then the mayor generally will select members of the council. For instance, I know with Councilor Slater, I still have notes in my file that he had interest, for instance, in a economic development committee. And if the council wants to move forward potentially on that, would be one of those committees in January that you could look at. I will say that from the staff side, we are to the point where we're posting our downtown URA / Main Street person, and that eventually will then morph into a Main Street board, which will really be your economic development impetus for your downtown URA corridor, and so things are in the works for that. The lay committees, commissions, and boards, to make sure that we're sort of clear, is that in your packet on page 12 and then subsequent pages, for instance, you have a planning commission. Planning commission is an example of a commission. You appoint the commission, but then state law takes over as to their power and authority, and then appeals, of course, then come back to you as a governing body. Your budget committee, you select that. It is a committee. It's required by state law. They're governed by state law with regards to your budget. But ultimately, the budget is your decision. The library board, they have their own taxing district. So their board is just that, and you make the appointments, and they serve the library and then report up through that district. Your housing authority, You make the appointments. You don't have authority over your housing authority. They gain their directive through state law and most federal, and certainly through HUD and their regulation. You have a Parks and Recreation committee. This is different than a Parks Commission. For instance, the county has a Parks tax district, and that tax district has a Parks Commission that manages the Parks district. Here you have a Parks Committee. They take direction from the governing body. You dictate what that committee does and what its vision. The Fire and the Police Committee actually go back many moons. It took us a while to go back and find all of those. And it states that they're supposed to meet. The question is that things have evolved over all these decades. You have to really decide, and I would say have some further conversation with your fire chief and police chief about those committees. But I do know that in the year I've been here, they haven't met. You just created the Historic Landmark Commission, and you see that there's a couple of vacancies on those. And again, through local code, but also through some state code, is how your Historic Landmark Commission operates. And I will say that with the Downtown Main Street Board, which is 4 points, one of their points is historic preservation. So you'll see a lot of continuity between those. You then have your Coos Bay North Bend Water Board. There is not a council liaison. That I will say that I was brand new last year, and it was on a sheet of paper that I was given. And we since learned that there is no council liaison to the Coos Bay North Bend Water Board. You have 2 appointments, and Coos Bay has 2 appointments. And that is a 4-person board, and they actually manage the policy of that, and they have a general manager that reports up to their board. That is from the high level, if you will, from staff. And then certainly I want to also remind you that in your council adopted rules, you have an entire section in here on council committees, which is 2.04.09. And it starts on page 15, and it lays out all of your purview, responsibility, and guidelines for appointments and removals to your committees.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So really, our task then tomorrow evening, there'd be a recommendation to approve the application period is what we're looking at. So it'd be we would post these, that they would be available to apply for November 24th through the December 31st. That's what we would be doing tomorrow evening. Then we'll follow the council rules process where we get the applications. I would go through them, and then there's a process where the mayor can appoint the positions, correct?
Right.
Okay. Any questions about any of this? I know it's complicated because there's some things that each committee has kind of different rules, and some are how the parks works is if they've given a specific task, and if they don't have a task, then I've learned that they don't necessarily meet. And so, we really have to pay attention to each one of them. They're very different. Councilor Slater?
Well, there were 2 aspects presented. One of them, and both had merit, but one of them was, talking about what, as we look in the committees in total, what do we want to retain, what do we maybe want to add, and how that shapes up that way, and that's a good discussion.
Yeah.
The other one being is, like the ones we know that are around, Planning Commission, Budget Committee, and that set, of which we'd like to have Library Board, have people apply. I was thinking, we post that forever and ever, and you get maybe some things going on. I was thinking, in your and David's expertise, you might do a sort of a Facebook explanation of, hey, here's the Planning Commission, look at what's going on, and boom, get it out into that set of folk, with a little bit of excitement, and maybe you'll generate some interest that way.
Yeah, I think using social media would be a good way to disseminate the information, for sure, among
Yeah,
others.
yes, absolutely. And I will say, with Counselor Slater's help last year, we actually had really revised and updated the website, for instance, which is what we use to cross-promote, because he had asked for some additional description. So we sort of, ping-pong back and forth until we felt that we'd met those expectations. And I think it made for a better list of the committees. And then we incorporated that into the application, so that as we cross-promote, folks get those descriptions.
And-
Good suggestions.
I was listening to what you were saying, Mr. City Administrator, about instead of maybe creating an economic development committee, having you had mentioned that there was going to be a position with the downtown association, and have that be maybe tasked with what we would want some of those committee members to do, because that would be trying to figure out what that would look like.
Ultimately, so where we're headed, Kaylee, almost from first couple of weeks with me is, we started what we call Main Street Light.
Main Street.
Okay, so for the first year, we were starting, we got involved in the Main Street program. We sort of have been evolving. Now we're to the point where we'd gotten, the URA to fund the position. We've now gotten the job description. Our goal is to, hopefully have someone on board, starting the 1st of January. They'll then take it to the next level where they'll actually, get to the point where we'll create a Main Street board. Again, it'll be a new board for the council to appoint positions to. Those board members then have joint volunteer committees. So you have committees that focus on the 4 points of the Main Street program. But more importantly, one of them really focuses on your festivals. Another is on economic development. Another is historic preservation. So when you look at where we are potentially headed with our URA district and downtown in concert, you'll see that reflective as a lot of the pillars that we've started to put in your budget, tied to your goals and vision. But hopefully, is responsive to where the council wants to go, with civic involvement and committees in general.
Okay, how does that sound, Counselor Slater?
Well, it ought to be interesting.
Okay, all right, I'm going to take that as we can move on to the next item. So we had,
Madam Mayor?
yes, oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Nordoff.
Yes, so I don't think it's correct to say that we didn't have a liaison to the water board, because before I got appointed to that, Mike Burbally was appointed, and I called him up and said, what's the duties here? And he says, don't worry about it till the budget time. So we have had someone as a liaison to be on the budget committee for the water board for a long time. So would that not show up here?
I think that there's been some conversations with the water board. Mr. City Administrator, was it the executive director that you had spoke with?
So the general manager and I did indeed have conversation, and that's where the confusion came from, is that the board, you're a council, okay? So the council makes appointments to their budget committee. Their governing body makes appointments to their budget committee. What happened is, because it was listed as that, me being me, brand new, we're like, well, it's listed here, so we're like, appoint. So shortly after Councilor Nordoff was appointed, we're like, ooh, what do we do? So there was a compromise made because we didn't want to create a gap. And so he's like, well, when the budget comes up, we'll have her, included in the budget process.
Okay.
We can't usurp their board.
Gotcha.
So that's why it's not there.
That's their rules and bylaws?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you for clearing that up. So is there further discussion about, do we have other further discussion on council committees, lay committees, commissions, and boards, or did we cover it all?
Unless you all want to create some additional committees or anything, we'll advertise what you have. If you want us to advertise more or less, now would be a good time to tell us. Or
City
tomorrow.
recorder is looking,
What he said.
what he said.
If we were to create more committees, they need to draft a resolution to create those committees before.
I think we're good.
I don't think we need to create more committees. We need to fill the ones that we have now and work the economic arm through the Main Street. But it's not called a committee. Would it be a Main Street,
It'd be
ad
your,
hoc?
Main Street Board.
Main Street Board? Or I think that would be a good goal to have. Counselor Nordoff?
We had talked, I thought about doing the homeless, a special council committee to look at the homeless issue and kind of put something together in accordance with the ordinance, but looking at the maps and is there something we want else in that draft ordinance? The camping ordinance, homeless camping. And I think it was Mr. Slater and Mr. Richardson and me. And but that's like an ad hoc.
It's an ad
committee.
hoc with a specific task.
Right.
So does it apply, we don't have to officially post anything or have it filled, so it would just be
You've already
a
voted.
special group. Yeah, so I think we're good there.
Okay, so not so much part of this.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Correct. Okay? Okay, so that would take us to item C, replacement of fire department apparatus. So good to see the police chief in person here, too.
Fire chief too.
Or, sorry, fire chief, sorry.
I was like, we
You
have
know-
our captain. Who is that behind that mask?
Sorry.
It's already been a
Sorry,
long
you know
night.
what? I'm going to put my fire department jacket on right now, before you take it away from me.
First of all, does everyone have one of these in your packets?
Yes.
Do you have one? Okay.
I had it, and then I lost. Oh, wait.
Has Cal got a copy? Okay, then you're all good.
Okay.
Sorry, we take care of the council, so I should have told you that.
Okay.
We got your back.
There you go.
I'm just
I can
making
see
sure
that.
I got
I can
big
see that.
heart, I've got a big heart around it right now.
Round nose, trying to get it back.
So, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. What we're going to go over a little bit is a fire apparatus replacement proposal that we have. I'm not going to go extremely detailed. You guys have been here for a long time, but I want to cover the information for you as well. If you look on page 2, what we're looking at doing, I'll just kind of give a brief overview first. We are proposing to get 2 rapid attack vehicles, and these are a large pickup, small fire engine. And what we're going to try to do then at that point is to lessen the wear and tear on our heavy, big fire trucks. Change around a little bit, be able to go out on a lot of our calls with the smaller vehicles instead of taking our big fire trucks out there all the time. It's kind of a good idea, a way to lessen the load on our heavy apparatus. And these heavy apparatus, as you can see, are over $500,000 a piece. So if we can make them last longer, the better off we're going to be with that. So we'll go through a little presentation here that we have, and then we can kind of talk about it as we go. And feel free, if you have questions, just go ahead and ask. As you can see, there's a rough picture of this rapid attack vehicles that we're proposing. And our goal would be to provide a rapid response while extending the life of our fleet like we were talking about. And basically, like we had said, it's kind of putting the 2 vehicles into one, and we're able to take out a smaller vehicle rather than a big one in a lot of situations. And if you look on our next page here, we're talking the hours that we're actually putting on our vehicles. And our hope is on EMS calls, not our hope, what will happen, is we'll be able to reduce the EMS calls that we put on and hours on some of our larger apparatus. And you can see that it'll make a difference with 64, almost 65% of our calls being medical calls. A lot of those will be able to take out the smaller ones, lessen the wear and tear, and as you'll see on the next page as well, the fuel. You take out a big fire engine, it uses up quite a bit of fuel per hour, and it really adds up in a hurry. Where if we're able to use a smaller vehicle, it's going to use less fuel per hour. If you look at these numbers here, these are, of course, these fuel costs that we're looking at are 2020 fuel cost. Since this point, they've already went up over $1. And I don't know how much they're going to go up even more. But it's obvious at this point, just for fuel consumption alone, if we can use the smaller vehicles to go out, it's going to be cost effective that way. The repairs, I was discussing, Councilor Nordoff had a question for me this evening. We spend quite a bit of money on vehicle repairs. If it's a fire truck, it's kind of like years of a dog's life. It multiplies out by 7, it seems like. And Councilor Richardson, you're aware of this when the garbage truck industry as well. If it's a certain use for it, they're going to charge you for it. And we had to do a brake job on a vehicle, and that cost us over $2,000. We have a special DEF, which is a diesel additive.
Diesel exhaust.
Yeah, but it's a tube that actually, yeah, anyway, just the tube alone, a piece of the material, was almost $2,000 just for that. So the costs are really, really big on everything we use. So in the last month, we've had over $6,000 just in
Wow.
what we'll call normal repairs of our apparatus. So our goal is, hopefully, it is easier to work on an F550 chassis. It's cheaper to work on those than it is to work on a big fire truck. We're still gonna have things that are gonna come up, things are gonna break, that's what happens. But it's gonna be less expensive to fix, and hopefully we can use these vehicles that much more as well.
Gee, are those diesel? They're-
Nope, we specifically went with the big gas engine on those. We've had some recommendations from some local Coos Forest Patrol. They said, you guys aren't going with the diesels, are you? And we said, nope, we're looking at the gas. And they said, that's the way they would recommend to go as well. The diesel has a little bit more pull power, has a little bit more, but seems as though some of the environmental things going on right now kind of add to some of the challenges versus having a gas
Well,
engine.
they get a little better mileage, but they're.
They do.
When they go down, they're way more expensive.
Yep. If you're gonna buy a starter for a gas engine, you're gonna spend $400. If you're gonna buy a starter for a diesel, you're gonna spend $1,000. So the costs of them are just that much more. One of the neat things about what we found here is this particular rapid attack vehicle. It does meet all the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association standards. We can take it up to 4 firefighters, and we have good ground clearance and storage for transporting fire, medical, and rescue supplies and personnel. On that, when we have the Cascadia event, which that's something that is going to happen, we've done a lot of look into that. The area with Pony Village in it is going to liquefy. That's just, so passing that is going to be impossible to do. In essence, our city will be divided into 2 separate parts. We have a plan in place for that. We have a lot of our firefighters that live over on the west side of town. We have some that live over here, and that's the fire stations we're going to go to. Right now, we don't have any 4-wheel drive vehicles on either station that are capable of fighting fires. We have the big fire trucks, but if there's mud on the roads, it's just not gonna work. We have 4-wheel drive vehicles that we can take for rescue, some pickups or staff vehicles, but they don't have firefighting capabilities. These would extend out our firefighting capabilities on both sides of town. When we have this Cascadia event, which when you talk to the experts, it's going to happen. It's not if, it's when it's going to happen. It's going to basically mirror our 2 fire stations. We're going to have the capabilities on this side of town to get over through mud, over trees, through different things to give fire protection as well as EMS protection, and we're going to have the same on the west side of town as well.
I think these will really be helpful on these small man-caused brush fires around.
It's going to give us a lot more capability to get in there.
You
What?
can get in and work.
Yep. The off-road vehicle that we have now to be able to get to those brush fires is a 2-wheel drive.
Right.
So we know that on the Troutman property, which we all know across from Pony Village, we burn that off every couple of years. And we know that we don't go off the blacktop in there, because if we do, we're going to be stuck in there, as we saw a truck here just recently. A lot of people had seen that. But it's only a 2-wheel drive vehicle that we currently have. These are 4-wheel drive, and it gives us the capability to get on them these fires a lot quicker.
Good deal.
Let me see here. Okay. And the part that we do like here towards the end, we're one ahead on our agenda here because we're looking at ARPA fund proposals next on the agenda, but that's what we're looking at for this, is an ARPA fund proposal. We've attempted in other ways to get financing to do this. We've tried through USDA grants, we've tried through FEMA grants, and we have not been successful in doing that. So it's not something we're just coming out and saying, we've got to do this. We've been planning for this for a little while, putting it in place, doing research, and trying to do it as well. We're not just thinking it's going to happen. We have been actively pursuing other grants as well, unsuccessfully. And that's kind of the end of our proposal there.
I think the part on top of the page is that the zero cost to the taxpayers is that.
That's a pretty good item, isn't
It's
it?
a pretty good,
And you
Yep.
want to spend $320,000.
Yes, we do,
Okay,
for 2 vehicles.
then we took care of one other thing. All right.
So, if you will, we have our finance director on because what you'll be asked to do tomorrow is tied directly to this. It's not something you can just raise your hand tomorrow and say. So if we will, Madam Mayor, we'll bring on our finance director, and she will very briefly walk you through the process and the authorization that's going to be required tomorrow to move forward, because no company out there makes the same fire truck. So,
Okay.
if you will, Miss Jessica, you've got the floor.
Do you want me to speak on the item now or as we go through the agenda? Because it's on the actual agenda.
It is, but I figured to relieve the chief, and because it's all the same thing, I'd go ahead and just grab it now.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so we just heard from the chief regarding the rapid attack vehicles. And should the council decide to move forward with the purchase of these RAVs, staff has identified sole source procurement as the preferred method of procurement. The cost of the RAVs, as discussed, is estimated at $320,000, and funds are available through the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, which we received in July. Those are also referred to as the Arpa funds. Under the sole source procurement, council must make a written finding that supports the conclusion that the goods or services are available from only one source. These findings must also be published for 7 days prior to the award of a contract. So in your packet, starting on page 17, you'll see a memo with some background and proposed findings. And then on page 19 is the proposed public notice. Let me flip open my packet. So I'd just like to run through the findings because that's what you'll be making a determination on tomorrow evening. And so we have 3 findings identifying this as the sole source provider. The first being that resolution number 2685 resolves that when feasible, purchases shall be made locally. Cascade Fire Equipment Company, also referred to as Cascade, is the nearest vendor to North Bend and is therefore considered local. I would
Jessica-
notate those.
Of Jessica.
Sorry?
Jessica, can I interrupt you for just a second?
Sure.
I'm just making sure that I follow along with what the staff recommendations are. So I see you were reading something that said resolution. What page was that on?
So the resolution's not in your packet. This is an older resolution that we're referring to as part of the finding.
Okay.
So it's just basically backing up why this is our sole source provider.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
part of that has to do with location. And so that resolution speaks specifically to purchasing local. So it's part of our finding.
Okay. I just want to make sure I didn't
So
miss
I'll
the
back-
resolution that I was supposed to be reading.
No, the resolution 2685 was a council resolution from years ago that says that we'll purchase locally when it's feasible. So we're trying to drive home the fact that this is the most local provider that we have. So I was adding that they're located in Oregon, and they're the only one located in Oregon out of the 3 quotes that we received. So that also adds to the fact that they are the local vendor.
Okay.
The second finding is that Cascade provides a turnkey product without major customization or modification that would increase the price or delivery timeline. And the third finding is this procurement is for emergency vehicles, which the city desires a sole source of responsibility to ensure compatibility of equipment. Cascade not only provides the product, but the compatible service. So as Chief spoke to earlier, these repairs can be costly, and we want to make sure that we have the right parts, they're compatible. So we want one vendor who can give us the vehicle and then also provide the service for it. Cascade does both of those. So based on those three findings, staff has determined that Cascade Fire Equipment Company is the sole source provider for this contract and recommends approval of the findings and staff authorization to publish a 7-day notice of determination that the goods are available from only one source. Upon completion of the 7 days, if no appeal is filed, staff would bring this back to council on December 14th at the council meeting, and that would be the time that you would award contracts should you choose.
Okay, got it. Page 16. Got all the details, so you guys can have the exact motion for tomorrow evening. All right, any questions from the council? Sounds like there could be some great cost savings with these vehicles, so
That's what we're really planning for.
yeah, very good. Okay, was there other items that you wanted to
Nope,
go
that's
over?
all, that's all we had for tonight.
We got it, okay. All right,
Okay, thank you.
thank you, Fire Chief.
You almost lost your jacket.
I know, keeping it tight on tonight. All right, so that takes us to number 7. Now we can bring, so we have the purchase of the police vehicles.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
you
Did
actually,
I-
so we hopscotch, so
Oh,
you'll
you're
go back
right.
to 3D.
I gotta go back to the other one here. So we go back to
Review
Arpa funds.
ARPA funds proposal, and we had received a memo about this. This is item D under discussion, or yes, item D under the discussion.
Right,
I was
so-
trying to streamline Jessica Terra.
So, sent to you via email, also included in your mailboxes was a copy of the ARPA plan. This is not a plan for approval tomorrow night. This would be a potential plan for your first meeting and your only meeting in December. What you see there is the work of 4 iterations with the department heads, reviewing all of the current projects that are aligned with council goals and strategies and that otherwise don't have funding. A couple highlights that I want to put on there is that you'll see the community center rehabilitation. There's $500,000 on the second tranche. Second tranche would be your next fiscal year. The reason that it's $500,000 is we'll be aggressively still working, trying to find state or federal money that can subsidize that, because the renovation of your community center is about a $915,000 project. So it's not a cheap project. You'll also see the community outreach city events. This is trying to revitalize your community, your events, your festivals, and sort of post-COVID bring your community back under a unified umbrella. And so we budget $60,000 per year for that. You see the community services officer, there's $150,000. You have in draft right now the camping ordinance, but you'll also hear later on the agenda another initiative. This allows a unified officer. There's a model of 5 of these in the state. We've also spoken to some of our state delegates at the legislature about this, but it allows us to have a dedicated resource that gets to know the homeless on a first name basis, because by having this, it frees up potentially 2 officers per call. So this is something we worked with the police chief on. The community survey, you'll see that in year 1. This is something that will allow you to do one of the most comprehensive surveys, community survey, and then actually get feedback back from your constituents so that you can make their priorities your priorities. It is the National Community Survey, and it can be tailored. So for instance, specific questions by, say, parks or police or fire, economic development, urban renewal, all of that can be incorporated to get really great feedback. You'll see homelessness and mental health initiatives. Again, I'm going to talk briefly about that when we go down the agenda, but at this point we've reserved $100,000 on each, but that potentially will be matched 10 to 1. Outdoor recreation, we're furthering the parks recreation master plan. So we have put some placeholder money, combined $225,000 spread over the 2 years. because what happens is you just don't keep getting capital money, if you will, for parks. It's actually been dwindling. So this allows us to find out from the community survey what the public wants, and then for you all to decide and for us to incorporate it and execute it. You see money in here for police vehicles over the 2 years. In the current budget that you all have adopted, this is taxpayer funded, you have 4 police cars. For the course of the next 2 years, so they just opened the bids for the 2022 cars. Those can take 6 to 8 months to actually get from the assembly line, get them outfitted, get them on the road. So what we're proposing is not using any additional tax dollar money until potentially 2024, but go ahead and use the COVID federal money to buy those 2 police cars per year. So by 2024, we should have 8 SUV Durangos on the street. And so it's like buy one, get one free, if you want to put it in that perspective. The pool infrastructure, because of the potential COVID money here, if you recall, originally we had earmarked money at the pool level, but we knew that we had originally had it designated for equipment for the fire department. Because of all the state and federal grant money coming in, we have taken a step back and said, okay, we got the $375,000 from the Mogan Foundation. If we leave that money over there and we match it 1-to-1, plus combine it with this $150,000, we should have roughly about $700,000, give or take, to do all of the infrastructure at the pool. And this way, if we do it all at once, we don't have to take it down a second time next year. And so my proposal is that we concentrate on all the infrastructure over and above what the Mogan Foundation does, but then we pull in the air handler and everything else, including the ADA lift. We pay for it all in one swoop. We operate the pool at no cost to our residents once we open through June 30th. And then by July 1st of next year, we implement our new rates and fees. And so it's a compromise, but again, it goes back to your trust of the public. You asked them to put the levy. This is a plan now that does roughly about $700,000 of capital infrastructure, 0 of that on the backs of the taxpayers. So,
Yeah.
then you see the rapid attack vehicles. You see that from the fire chief. And then there's a proposal here for a telehealth room at the North Bend Library. This is a new concept, but it's one that's been implemented in other communities, so I applaud our library services director. And what this allows is folks that do not have proper internet or video connectivity or computers or anything to come into one room in the library, interact in a private setting with their doctors, and have their telehealth meetings. So that's the proposal. You see it right now. I want you to digest this, think it over real aggressively, and then if there are changes, tweaks, or things, please let me know. But otherwise, we'll move this forward to your December meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good, comprehensive list. I know you guys have been having lots of meetings and working with all the department heads on this, and it did not happen overnight. So thank you for putting all the effort into that. Okay, so that's the ARPA fund proposal that we'll see later on in December. The review for the city council agenda. So let's go ahead and walk through that. So tomorrow night, after we call to order the Pledge of Allegiance, we're going to go, we've got the consent calendar, we've got the minutes, and then item B is the League of Oregon Cities County Coordinated Homeless Response Letter. David, do you want to talk about these items?
Yes. First thing was any changes, corrections, anything on the minutes?
I did not have any.
Oh, good. All right. On the League of Oregon Cities, so a opportunity is coming down the pike, being drafted. The legislation is not yet currently drafted. This is how quick and fast this is moving. But I participated on a conference call on Friday with the League of Cities as well as other potential city and county governments and interested nonprofits that are looking at this. This legislation is being proposed to have a framework that would fund 5 city/county pilots in the state where they would offer $1 million for 2 years. And during that process, we would all work together on a 5-year strategic plan to address all of the homelessness issues. So every stakeholder would be at the table to do this. The critical part of this would be funding for year 1 and year 2, not year 3, 4, and 5. That's part of what we would all have to figure out. Coos Bay has committed, Coos County is committed, all verbally. I, on behalf of the city, also made a commitment. However, we now have to solidify that commitment by an action of the governing body. So tomorrow, I want you to look over everything that you have here and decide if you want to create a consortium with Coos County, Coos Bay, and North Bend to put our name in the hat officially in order to be one of 5 pilots in the state, which would be approved by legislation for us to aggressively work with every stakeholder to help address homelessness in our respective communities.
Well, I think it's great to do that because right now there's really nothing going on. And if we can get, some funding, at least for 2 years, it's gonna really kind of drive us in the right
Yeah,
direction.
what's the financial impact for years 3, 4, and 5?
Yeah,
That's very dependent on what your strategic plan is and what you come up with and get implemented. So your costs for year 1 and year 2 will be covered. The statement from Friday's call is they don't want to see you at the end of 2 years with any money left in the bank. They made that very clear. So each pilot would be handed the $1 million. You would have to come together, get all your stakeholders, and figure out who can do what, put together that 5-year stakeholder plan. But then, moreover, on part of that, then you got to figure out what your long-term solution is. They stopped short of any commitment, but said there is a lot of money coming down the pike, and then if you can show and establish that you have got a plan, you have now positioned yourself for potential funding in year 3, 4, and 5. But there is no guarantee. And so I put that on the table that, we would have to figure out collectively what it's all going to cost.
And it would be a partnership between the city of Coos Bay, the city of North Bend, and Coos County?
Correct.
So,
yes.
and are we, and this is just, this letter of authorization is just to put our name in the hat. We don't even know, it's going to be really competitive, I would imagine, in the state of Oregon.
It's going to be competitive, and so this gets us started, gets us in the hat, and then starts to move us forward to potentially get written right into the bill, the legislation. There'll be the 5 pilots written into the legislation. And so between now and December, the MOU will be written. So as soon as they get the letters, they'll know who all is truly on board and then wants to move to the next step and then the next step. And so it's something that the city manager, Roger Craddock, and myself and Commissioner Melissa Crivens have been in communication about. And then also even Senator Dick Anderson has been on the dialogue as well.
I think it shows goodwill on our part, throwing our hat in the ring. Because it is a big problem, it's multi-layered. what I think.
Jim, you'll have that opportunity to make a decision tomorrow.
Okay. Let's see.
However, if we're on the consent agenda and we pass the agenda, it's been decided.
Oh, yes, you're absolutely right, sorry. Except any one council member can always withdraw it from,
Okay.
yes. Yes,
Just-
good point, thank you.
Yeah.
He's a quick learner.
I'm just looking here.
Okay, there is there anything else with that one? Because I do have an ad on the consent agenda.
I don't have any further questions. Did the council have any questions, or do they want, if we wanted it removed from the consent agenda, would you want us to know tonight? Or is there a consensus from the council that, that we could move forward with this response letter? Anybody have any?
Depends on what item C is.
Item C is a liquor license for Elite, it's beer, it's wine.
We'll put a pin in that then for a second. With item B, Counselor Garbodin, did you want to pull it out of the consent agenda, or, okay. So everybody, the council is comfortable with leaving that in the consent agenda to, because then we would be authorized, if we went ahead and passed the consent agenda, one of the items then would be basically giving our, the authorization for the city administrator to move forward with the response letter.
Yeah, we'd get it
Sounds like I'm hearing
signed
everybody's okay.
post haste and get you to sign it.
Yeah, sounds like everybody's comfortable with that. So C will be a liquor license, you said?
Yes, we
have
have
our-
our captain filling in for our chief, so
Good
Captain
to
Mitz.
see you, Captain, in person.
Thank you.
It's nice to have you here. And so tell us about this liquor license.
Okay, so the liquor license, Madam Mayor and City Councilors, is for the new business at 3550 Tremont Avenue, North Bend. It's Elite Market 1. And at this time, all the background work has been done, and the police department approves the issuance of this application.
It's been owned by the chip pile.
Yeah, it's right there
New
across the
market
street.
there by the gas station.
They got a little gas station there,
76 station.
Yes,
where Stoney's used to be?
yes,
Right next
right next to it, yes.
Okay. So I hear.
So,
Okay. All right, any questions about the liquor license or the process?
Nope.
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So that would be all the items in the consent calendar, correct?
Yep, you've already discussed committee openings.
And then there wasn't a public comment tonight, correct?
There's no one signed up.
No, so we talked, yep, so that would take us to.
Ralph.
The Ralph Dunham Show on number 5, request of authorization for Brussels Street project.
If I had a hat, it'd be in my hand. You graciously extended some of the paving, which the citizens, I'm sure, appreciate. We
Yeah.
extended the length of Brussels and Chester. Unfortunately, your Public Works Director had missed the boat a little bit on the estimated quantity to begin with. So when we completed our project, we had an original estimate of 900 tons. I told you on the paving, it was gonna be about 150 additional, and we installed 1,160 tons of asphalt in our streets, along with about an additional $6,000 worth of sidewalk improvements. So I am coming back to you, because you give me a little bit of rope, which I can play with unit price. This is a unit price contract. And it was just to underestimate, which usually I'm about 2 to 3% high on asphalt, but for some reason on this particular job, I underestimated the original quantity. It wasn't I took your rope and ran with it, it was, I was already in the hole when I asked for the original authorization and just didn't know it yet, so, in order to pay for what we have on our streets,
Yeah,
I'm asking authorization of council to pay them.
okay,
A little over 15 grand.
15,600 roughly.
yeah. Does that come out of contingency, or what happens there when?
It's still out of our STIP funds. It's, as far as individual projects, we had a little over $1 million in our STIP monies to be able to spend, and it's one of the projects in there, and I am managing to spend it all so we don't lose that extra 10% and
Yeah.
allocating it next year.
Okay.
All right. So I see, yeah, the authorization to, what's that?
Does he want to stay there and go through number 8?
You want to click on number 8, and then we'll circle back to 7, which is purchase the vehicles, because 8 on tomorrow night's agenda is authorization to enter into the additional agreement with ODOT Safe Routes. Save you a trip back to your chair is what I'm trying to do.
I previously discussed with you, or at least it came out in the city manager's report, ODOT had wanted us to do additional work, and they were gonna 100% fund it. I don't know that I misspoke, because that's what they told me, but we have bids we designed the project for the additional crossing at 14th Street, which will be an island in it. In doing that, we have to actually regrade 14th Street for about 90 feet in order to get the disabled access ramps to work, which the good news is we get a new portion of paving under our Safe Routes to School project. The price we have for the project from the contractor for the change order is $85,000, and also included in the project, which isn't in his price, is some new illumination to better illuminate the crossing, which we have an estimate of about $3,000. The agreement we received from ODOT says they will fund up to $80,000. The good news is the street improvements are worth about $24,000 outside of just making a better crossing, which ODOT is paying for, but we are receiving some benefit. They're asking us to pay a portion of it instead of, so roughly just under $10,000 would be our portion of the work.
Sounds good.
Okay. So I see the
Can I ask a related question?
Certainly.
What are you digging out of 14th Street? I mean, you did the sidewalk there, and then suddenly,
Well, today they were repaving the driveways, or paving, the alley was paved there, so they dug that up and put rock in. And so to blend from the new sidewalk, what happens often, once you get ADA, is that you're adjusting the height of the driveway that already existed, so we have to make a transition piece. And then in the street itself, when they put curb and gutter in, they cut, your gutter's 18 inches wide, they typically cut 27 inches, 11 inches, don't ask me why, beyond the curb instead of an even foot. So we're digging that out and repaving that once the curb and gutter's in the sidewalk. So primarily, they were just filling in what they tore out to put the sidewalk in
Yeah.
and adjusting the grade.
No, good.
look.
The sidewalk,
I saw the sidewalks, and suddenly the guys off, the street's almost cut off.
yeah. The sidewalk in front of the pool looks really nice. So,
And it does on 14th too, but they need to get their rock stockpile out of the street.
yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Ralph.
you.
Welcome.
Thank you to Ralph. So now we'll circle back up to what's item 7 tomorrow night will be the purchase of the police vehicles. And so we have Captain again here to talk to us a little bit about those, and we've got information on page 20 of our packet.
All right, to help the captain, this is a almost duplicative of what you did previously, although we just got in, as you recall, when the police chief came, there was only 2 2021 Durangos in the entire state.
Yeah.
They opened up the 2022. We got the price quotes. Everything is in here. We are attaching the existing budget, and then we'll go to the next step, which is the Arpa, and we'll try to get those cars in, because again, it takes that 6 to 8 months. So this is same dealer. We did get a local bid, but they were not close enough to make us feel comfortable to do business locally. Plus then we would have to ship the cars all the way, is it Salem? Where do you get them outfitted?
Yeah, would be the same.
Salem, to get them outfitted and then bring them back. There was a concern there. So this is to purchase the vehicles through Withenell Dodge in contract with the Wireworks LLC, outfit the vehicles. 4 vehicles out of current, and then, like I said, next month, next meeting, we'll go through with the other 2 out of ARPA in the current year. So therefore, you'd have 4, and then would slide and eventually get the other to 6, and then the following year, you'll get to 8. So you'll have 8 when we're done with this trance, and that's the buy one, get one free sort of deal.
There's 4 additional to the 2 that we authorized last month.
Correct, yes.
6
But we're gonna do them out of different fiscal budget. So we can't put in the full order until we get the ARPA approval from you.
Got it. Okay, any questions? Buy one, get one free? I like it.
Kinda like it.
Yeah.
You know, so.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, the rest of the, tomorrow night, we will see if we have any action from the executive sessions, the city administrator's reports, any committee reports, council comments, and other business. Do we know yet if there's any other business tomorrow evening? No, okay. So going back to our work session agenda, we've reviewed the city council agenda. We've said there's no public comment. And we have already had our executive session. So unless there was anything else, I think we can go ahead and adjourn the meeting, right? Before I do the gavel?
Comment?
Yeah, is it?
I think it would be appropriate, if we know we're gonna be in executive session for a long time, it would be appropriate to ask for public comment early before we, because it used to be at the front end of the work session agenda, and we dropped it back. And I think when we know we're gonna be,
And so like tonight, I had discretion to move the presenters up to the beginning from the executive session. So if I seek public comment, I can do that, and I can move it to the beginning of the council, correct? No?
It would not have mattered because they would have had to been signed up by 1 o'clock yesterday,
There was nobody signed up.
or whatever,
Nobody
or
signed
1
up.
o'clock today. And so there was no one signed up. So although it's a valid point, it's sort of kind of moot. There was no one signed up.
Yeah.
okay, good.
So,
Okay.
yeah, so
And,
no one was holding and no one got dropped.
And our city recorder is pretty good at letting me know ahead of time. I just like to reiterate that we're out on the agenda and that we didn't have any. So, all right, meeting adjourned.